So greetings. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to our webinar series titled We Can Achieve More, a dialogue on the Black male experience. I hope that everyone present is both healthy and safe. My name is Dan Thomas, and I serve as the program director for the Todd Anthony Bell National Resource Center on the African American Male. Today, you are participating in the third segment of a four-part series designed to provide Black males a platform to speak candidly concerning their experience in academia. Our session today will focus on the experience of 5 Black faculty members at predominantly white research universities. Scholarly perspectives will be provided that explore microaggressions, resilience, and potential remedies for addressing these issues at the institutional level. We will start the webinar with a candid conversation amongst the panelists. Please feel free to ask your pondering questions using the Q&A function, and we will address them throughout the presentation. Without further ado, I would like to welcome today's moderator and panelists. Today's moderator is Dr. Daryl B. Hood. Dr. Hood is an associate professor and environmental neuroscientist in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences in the College of Public Health at The Ohio State University. Before coming to OSU, Dr. Hood served as a faculty member at Meharry Medical College and Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in the Department of Pharmacology and Neuroscience. Collectively, Dr. Hood has 105 peer-reviewed publications, including book chapters, and has mentored over 15 master's students, 15 PhD students, and 9 postdoc fellows. He continues to serve on numerous editorial and review boards for scientific journals, government agencies, and academia. Now on to our panelists. First, we have Dr. Daryl M. Gray II. Dr. Gray is an associate professor of medicine in the Division of Gastroenterology, Hepatology, and Nutrition at The Ohio State University College of Medicine. Additionally, he serves as Deputy Director of the Center of Cancer Health Equity at OSU's Comprehensive Cancer Center, Medical Director of Healthy Communities for OSU Wexner Medical Center, and Chair of the OSU Wexner Medical Center's Health Equity Steering Committee. Dr. Gray's work leverages meaningful partnerships across public and private sectors to address health disparities and upstream social determinants of health among diverse populations across the state of Ohio and nationally. Our second panelist, Dr. Derek M. Griffith, is a professor of medicine, health, and society. He is the founder and director of the Center for Research on Men's Health at Vanderbilt University. Trained in psychology and public health, Dr. Griffith's program of research focuses on developing strategies to achieve racial, ethnic, and gender equity in health. He conducts research in 4 interconnected areas: applying the concepts of intersectionality and manhood to men's health, conceptualizing institutional racism, men's health disparities, and men's health equity, developing and testing individually tailored and precision lifestyle medicine interventions to prevent and control obesity and chronic diseases in African American and Latino men, and last but not least, devising and testing organizational level interventions to address racism in public health and medical practice. Our next panelist, Dr. Samuel R. Hodge, has served as a faculty member in the Sports and Exercise Education program within the Department of Human Sciences at Ohio State since 1995. Dr. Hodge engages in teaching, research, and service in the physical education, teacher education, and adapted physical education programs. His scholarship is situated in the theoretical framework of social constructionism, planned behavior theory, and critical race theory. His major lines of research foci are teacher professional preparation and inclusion and issues of social justice and cultural diversity. Our final panelist, Dr. Sakobi Wilson, is an associate professor with the Maryland Institute of Applied Environmental Health and Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, School of Public Health, University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Wilson has over 15 years of experience as an environmental health scientist in the areas of exposure science, environmental justice, environmental health disparities, and community engaged research, to name a few. He works primarily in partnerships with community-based organizations to study and address environmental justice and health issues and translate research into action. Dr. Wilson is director of the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice, and Health Laboratory. The laboratory focuses on providing technical assistance to communities fighting against environmental injustice and environmental health disparities in the DMV region and across the nation. At this time, I will now concede the floor to our moderator, Dr. Hood.
Thank you very, very much, Daniel. And if I can just, I seem to be having problems sharing the screen here. Let me just start over again and stop the share and start over again. Initially, I think we should probably give our thanks to the Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion at The Ohio State University, Dr. James Moore, for presenting us with this opportunity. And so we're very, very grateful to him for allowing us this opportunity to present this webinar in this fashion. Okay. Daniel, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Daniel?
Sorry, I am not.
Oh, all right. Well, just be patient with me for a second here. The screen is, all right, here we go. All right, and so today the panel would like to share with you our experiences. And the first question, if this is in the correct view, Daniel?
Yes, it is. Okay?
Yes. The first question that we like to address is, what does your presence as a Black male faculty member mean to each one of us? And I'd like to get this particular part of the dialogue going here. And to me, it's contextualized here on this slide shown here. I've been in the fight since the early 60s. I was born in 1958. I'm a bit senior to many of the panelists, and I hope that they view me as one of their senior partners in the movement. And as you can see here, my guiding principles have been set forth by four men, the first of which is my father. The next three men that I call my blue sky team, as you can see, have sort of shaped my development as an African-American faculty member from the beginning. This all started in Charlotte, North Carolina, as you see, because my parents had me be a plaintiff in Brown versus the Board of Education. Now, of course, the subcase in Charlotte, North Carolina was Swan versus the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education. And I'll show you here my mom, my dad to the right there in that photograph there. That's Julius Chambers sitting opposite of my father. He's the quintessential great attorney from Charlotte, North Carolina that argued this case. That went up to one of our other frat brothers guys on the Supreme Court there. So Julius Chambers is to be given credit for that. And of course, the plaintiff, Darius Swan, sitting next to Dr. Chambers' wife there. And so I've been sort of conditioned with respect to the movement and with respect to my department. As you can see here, this has resulted in the quintessential representation of public health. And when I say public health, we all know now that public health is viewed, or racism is viewed, as a public health crisis. All of the systemic discriminations, the structural inequities in our society now have consolidated themselves into my department here in my college here, which is the College of Public Health. And to that end, my standing here in the department is undergirded by all of those experiences. And I will come back to this public health scholarship that I've established in honor of my mother and father for undergirding my development as an African-American male coming up through the system from the beginnings of the movement. I'm sorry, with Martin Luther King. And so let's move to the next person on the list. Any of you all can jump in. I think Daryl, I think it's you though, or is it Derek?
Derek.
Okay, Derek, go ahead. And I'll stop sharing, by the way.
So I think the first question that at least you all said to us was, what does our presence as a Black male faculty member mean to us?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I think it means several things. One, it's an opportunity to have a particular narrative and a particular voice into different conversations that have not necessarily been there when we have not been present. The types of things that we study, the types of lens that we use, the ways that we hold people accountable and hold issues, up high, the ways that we do the work that we do, and simply our sheer presence. I've heard from students, in passing that, I was the only Black male faculty that they saw in 4 years at Vanderbilt. Not an uncommon thing. I was certainly the first Black male in my department, and one of the few. That's us being the first, and the few are not, unique. And it's unfortunately a more common experience than the alternative. So I think it just presents an opportunity for us to be able to educate our colleagues and students. There is a voice and something unique that comes with us being present in these spaces.
Thank you very much, Dr. Griffin. Next.
Yeah, so this is Shakobia Wilson at Maryland again. Yeah, I have some of the same feelings Dr. Griffith just shared. I think there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a Black faculty member, Black male faculty member, being a role model. Just comes with the territory, right? As Dr. Hood talked about his growing up in the movement. Part of the reason why I am where I am is not because I'm enamored with academia. I want to make sure that there are mentors and people out there to support scholars of color who come through, who understand that cultural lens and that cultural background, and provide an environment that's conducive to them maximizing their potential. What I have been dealing with microaggressions or white supremacy or white privilege or rankism or elitism that we've all have experienced during our careers. I've been sharing, talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. Everybody and their grandma now wants to recognize there's racism in the country, and all our institutions, including academia, particularly academia, needs to go through that reckoning. Like, there's racism. There were racism in UNC Chapel Hill. There were racism in Michigan in my postdoc. There were racism in South Carolina. I got on the Underground Railroad up out of South Carolina, came to Maryland, think I came to the promised land, and still dealing with racism as a faculty member, right? So if I'm dealing with that, what are the students dealing with? With the climate and the environment. So part of my job is to take my experiences as a faculty member and make sure that environment's better for other folks who look like me, come from places like I come from. I come from Mississippi, right? From Vicksburg, Mississippi. They don't have to experience that. Those isms and that been undermined, been undervalued, been made invisible. So I fight for students who look like me, and I fight to make sure this environment is conducive for them to be successful. And I'll stop there.
Very good. Next, Dr. Gray.
Oh, sure. I'll echo in part of what Dr. Griffith said as well, in that, it's part of it represents being, one of the few. So as I think about academic medicine, particularly as I'm representing, the faculty within the College of Medicine, the Medical Center, there are less Black men, at least according to a 2015 report that has actually more recently been examined again, less Black men matriculating through careers in medicine than in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, if we look at those people of color, particularly African Americans who are in academic medicine, they're only 2%. So albeit African Americans represent 13% of the population, we are representing 2% of academic clinicians. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. I think as well, understanding being a Black male faculty member, that you are also under the kind of microscope. And I say that with understanding that we all carry, burden may not be the right word, but we all carry something with us, that a responsibility, I should say, because we know that our performance impacts those who will be let in behind us. It impacts those who will be allowed to be or advanced or promoted or encouraged to go into leadership positions, who will be admitted to the medical schools, who will be recruited for faculty positions. And so, that is something that our presence means too. It's a responsibility as well to ensure that we are doing, to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Wilson said, that we are doing all we can to build more, to foster climates that encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is something that we take into our roles each and every day. And certainly, even when we're outside of our institutions, we carry that with us as well. And so I'll just stop there as well.
Thank you, Daryl. And Dr. Hodge, could you continue that line of thought?
Absolutely. I agree with all of the comments that my brothers have made prior to me speaking. So I will keep my comments brief and just simply say 4 major things come to mind for me: presence, decisions, influence, and opportunity. We need to be there. Our presence is critical. Things do not happen the same way when we're not present. We know that. If we're there, then we can be a part of making decisions. And although oftentimes we are that one person or a handful of people, there are strategies that we have learned over the years to negotiate and navigate those spaces where we can influence those decisions. And so that's an important piece of it as well. Typically, we're not the majority, so we have to use certain strategies, pre-meetings before the actual meeting, conversations with people outside of the meeting. So we go in with some influence and some advocacy and support. And then just having opportunities as it relates to making those decisions when it comes to student admissions, when it comes to faculty promotion and tenure decisions.
Very good. And Dr. Hodge, I want to keep you on that theme as we move to a discussion of opportunities, right? And so, and thank you for ending where you did. That's a perfect segue. What about opportunities, panel, in your department with respect to your being able to collaborate as you were coming up through the tenure track, and with respect to the Ohio State University versus Vanderbilt versus the University of Maryland, what are some of the modalities that your university has to sort of stimulate and encourage these collaborations? So Sam, Dr. Hodge, would you continue on that theme?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's really good about working at these predominantly white institutions is resources and opportunities. And so we have those resources available to us. We have those opportunities available to us. So it's incumbent upon us to take advantage of those kinds of things. So I've been able to, in the 25 years that I've been here at Ohio State University, establish collaborations and partnerships with a host of colleagues across the globe, really, in Africa, Brazil, Colombia, Japan, of course, United States, including Puerto Rico as well. Collaborations as it relates to scholarship and research, collaborations as it relates to service, professional development, recruiting and mentoring, community service, study abroad opportunities. And of course, all of that must be undergirded with both internal and external grants. And so at Ohio State University, as a case study, both within the college, the university itself, and of course, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, there are, as well as the Office of International Affairs, there are a multitude of different kinds of places you can tap into to get funding and support. Everything from OSU Faculty Research Grant Award, the College Emerging Scholarship, Seed Grant, Faculty Research Grants, the Dean's Innovation Challenge Seed Grant, the Center for Latin American Studies. I mentioned that much of my research is in Latin American, South American countries. And so I tap into the grants that are available through that center. And then, of course, major grants as it relates to United States Department of Education and other places where you can get grant support from.
All right. And so juxtaposed to that, or in addition to that, Dr. Griffith, or let's see here, or Sakobi. Yes, Sakobi, would you elaborate on that with respect to comparing and contrasting some of those issues?
Yeah, I think as was stated, Dr. Hodge said, there's a lot of opportunities at PWIs, and I'm I went to HBCU as an undergrad, so the infrastructure, sort of the pre-award support infrastructure, tends to be a little bit different. And I think in my career at Maryland, one of the positive things been in Maryland is over time, my school of public health is only about 12, 13 years old. So compared to other institutions like older medical schools or other schools of public health, it has grown over time, right? So I've had more opportunities. So the pre-board support team, I mean, for example, COVID is terrible, y'all. Pandemic, I'm gonna tell y'all another thing. This is supposed to be my sabbatical. Worst sabbatical ever, man. Worst sabbatical ever, okay? I mean, come on. But you know what? I knocked out a lot of grant proposals, y'all. I probably knocked out from all shapes and sizes, maybe about 15 from January to now.
Yeah.
About 5 or 6 things funded. So this year is probably my best year of funding since early in my career at South Carolina. But that's the only silver lining, because everything else is terrible. Just want to say that. But then it's also priorities. There have been some challenges at Maryland because our institution, because we're our new school of public health, other institutions I think have been more prioritized. Other schools like engineering and business school have been more prioritized when it comes to other types of support, seed grants, or even when we do internal submissions. And this is like a fact for me in my own personal development. There's been internal center grant submissions. In Maryland, not a single one of my internal competitions that I've led has been accepted since I've been in Maryland. And it's frustrating, y'all. I'm like, and I think it's because there's some bias against the kind of work that I'm doing. Particularly my work is focused on social justice, dealing with racism, right? And so I just want to say that people talk about they want to deal with these things, but then when folks have great ideas and initiatives, they're not supporting them. So I've gotten on one hand, I've gotten some support on the pre-award from School of Public Health, but these larger, bigger initiatives from the campus level, I haven't gotten support. And I'll stop there.
That is a contrast, because at the Ohio State University here, we do get support for those. As a matter of fact, we're doing one of these Kellogg initiatives right now, Sakobi. So I can see that's a big difference. Dr. Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been somewhat similar to Dr. Wilson in the lack of support for ideas that I put forward for internal grants or to build certain infrastructure within the university. Yet and still, it's been interesting because then years later, they come back and ask me to do the same thing that I proposed years before, because they finally realized what I was saying and what I was trying to do. But and part of it, I won't even get into the nuances of some of the, or not even subtleties of some of the feedback that I got was, well, you didn't include certain people, so we don't want to support it because you didn't include the people that we think should have been on it. And I'm like, that's not the way this works. So I think one of the things I just want to start with as a more basic thing is one of the things I was told early on in my career, there are 2 ways to be successful in academia. One is to be supported, and and the other way is basically for people to get out of your way. And I think either can be equally valuable depending on the space that you're in, or equally necessary. I think as it relates to my work and my opportunity to collaborate, I haven't really found collaborators, or I've had to basically bring them into my space to collaborate on things, specifically on things like related to Black men's health. But I could find collaborators on things that were a little more tangential and a little easier for people to sort of find some space, some synergy with. But as I've tried to build infrastructure around Black men's health and related issues, the issues related to racism, as Dr. Wilson talked about, it's really been a much more sketchy sort of space. But if I broaden it and soften it to things like health disparities and those kinds of issues, or reframe it and repackage it in tailoring and precision medicine, then there's a lot more sort of opportunities for collaboration.
I think that we all can find commonality with your recitation there, Dr. Griffin. Right. Daryl, great. Dr. Gray.
I want to tie in some themes, really starting with Jacoby, Dr. Wilson mentioning about COVID-19. You know, one of the things that I think COVID-19 has really brought a light to is the issues that have been undergirding our society for many years. Certainly, COVID-19 put a platform to health disparities, and many of us, you know, on this call, you know, on this Zoom, have been working in this space for a while. But now, because of COVID-19, there has been increased momentum and resources put towards work in addressing COVID-19, obviously, and the health disparities. But also, people are now realizing something that has been, you know, preached amongst public health colleagues for quite a while, which is social determinants of health. And so now, you know, in my space in healthcare and healthcare delivery and the intersection of public health and community engagement, you know, that's where we're seeing a lot of the momentum and some dollars going towards that. So that piece is another, to use Dr. Wilson's term of silver lining, that is another, I would say, silver lining of the pandemic. But I do see, you know, as far as collaboration in my work and those of my colleagues, really it has been not only focused on our because we, as many of you know, and certainly Daryl, you've done a lot of work in interprofessional education, but we have 8 health sciences colleges here, and we have been working around collaboration with these health sciences colleges for quite some time, really as it pertains directly to health equity. Daryl sits on our health equity steering committee with other colleagues from public health, our Curran Institute, our College of Dentistry, and the list goes on. But so we've tried to leverage these existing partnerships, but also existing community partners. So community engagement, I personally feel that we cannot address racism, social injustice, discrimination, poverty, without engaging those who are most proximal to it. And so community engagement is a key ingredient in that. And so I think our collaborations and partnerships with communities, individuals, organizations, and leadership is extremely important. And I think this is a growing area. Certainly we've kind of, and now I'm speaking broadly about healthcare systems, have broadly and kind of peripherally been engaging our communities. But I think this is a growing area. I do feel like OSU is in a position to be a leader in this space. We still have some pieces to put together though. But I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. And to that end, let's shift gears just for a moment here and speak to some of those duties that each of us finds ourselves performing in our department as a result of us being the only African-American underrepresented minority Black faculty member. Let's speak to those. These are these additional duties. Now, with regard to myself in the College of Public Health, had I not been a tenured associate professor upon joining from Vanderbilt and Meharry, you know, I would have found these extra duties to be not non-consequential, but an additional burden, a thankless task if I were coming up for tenure. I mean, several individuals have spoken to that already. So let's sort of delve into that a little bit. Daryl, did you want to start us out there?
Yeah, I'll start out more so with an example that I hope my my esteemed colleagues on this panel will also comment on. So I'll contrast my role to that of physician scientist, and there's a specific Black male that I have in mind. So in my role, so I'm a clinical associate professor, which means which is a little bit different in the promotion and tenure track. So I'm not going for tenure, okay? But I have a close friend and colleague, Black male physician scientist, who is. going for tenure as a physician scientist, funded physician scientist. And, you know, he's been in conversations where even people who look like us, and even people who don't, will encourage him not to pursue activities or even funded research work that intersects with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
He has now he definitely has a specific area in which his science lies. Okay, so it's kind of basic translational and clinical research. But not tangential to that work is how his science impacts communities. And to be effective in translating this work, community engagement is a piece of this.
Sure.
But because he is on the tenure track, he is often encouraged not to pursue that kind of intersectionality, because that might slow down or inhibit his tenure process. And I find that quite troubling, because what that suggests is that that work, that intersectionality, is not valued.
Not valued, not important.
So that's where, and I'll leave it at that, because I really want my other colleagues who are on the tenure track to kind of weigh in on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gray. Derek, start there.
Yeah, so I'll speak to this a little. I'm not going to, I actually want to just pick up on Dr. Gray's point, rather than sort of address the question I think that you asked, which is, so I sit on the universities, or have sat on the University Tenure Promotion Committee. And one of the reasons that your colleague got the advice that he got is because if you think about it from an external perspective, that's not what people value. So it is important, and it's difficult, because this is kind of the tension of being a faculty member of color, or being of someone who actually wants to do work that has impact, in addition to providing you basically for a livelihood in your career. And this is part of the tension, is how do you balance that? So when you have work that takes more time, takes more resources and so forth, it doesn't count for more. Even though you may actually have saved people's lives, you may actually have engaged people, done things, built infrastructure within a community to make lives better, that doesn't count any more than you writing a paper that, you know, particularly one that got highly cited or was in a fancy, you know, highly reputable outlet. So part of that tension is what's considered success, what's considered impact. Part of the tension that we face in our space as Black faculty is, how do you balance the commitment that we have to the population and to the issues that we are studying? And it's more personal. I would argue, for me, it's more personal to a lot of us than it is for even those who are studying things that, you know, they may be studying things, but it's not the same thing. They don't see their family members in the issues that we're talking about, yet I do. So if I study stuff on gendered racism, I see my nephews' faces. I see my parents' faces. I see my family members in those things. And so it's not the same thing as, oh, I just want to write this paper or do this thing. So it's a tension, because I fight with this a lot with junior faculty. And when I do mentoring sort of nationally, is exactly that issue, that, you know, on the one hand, frankly, it is good advice. I mean, to be blunt, it is good advice for the pragmatics of getting you through the tenure promotion process. It's a huge problem, as Dr. Wilson is writing in the chat, that we have this kind of discrepancy between that quality of that work and, you know, pushing people to do things that's frankly less impactful, but is more of the bean counting that we require for tenure promotion and for those kind of internal metrics, because we don't value health equity, health disparities work, community engagement quite to the same degree that we do other stuff.
Very good. And we stand before you. Sokovia and I have worked, myself before Sokovia, and Sokovia has continued on that particular trajectory. It must be your passion. And so the intersectionality of neuroscience and why individuals that live in close proximity to point source polluters, why they come down with disparate health outcomes, that's always been my passion. And so I took that on, and Dr. Griffith, as you know, I went against the grain. I did it anyway, but you have to go You have to jump 50 feet higher and run 40 miles an hour faster in order to succeed. But if it's your passion, then there's a greater power at work. Is there not, young man? Sam, did you have anything to add to that? Or you want to move on?
I think they covered it pretty well. I mean, the tenure promotion process is highly politicized, and that's a conversation that would take much more time than I think we have.
But
Okay.
Let me chime in real quick though.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I'm
sir.
not, I'm not sure how much time, but you're exactly right. Because my team promotion process speaks to what we're talking about. So
Mhm.
I was gonna hold it for later, but I think it's important to bring up me as an example, since I had to resubmit my package, as Derek knows and Daryl knows, because of this stuff that we're talking about. That half of what I did wasn't counted when it comes to the engagement and the application and the practice. Even though we're in a school of public health where public health practice, yeah, I don't want to get into it. You're right, Dr. Hodge. Public health practice, we're building roads, giving people access to sewer and water. We're shutting down incinerators, building community capacity, and that ain't impact. I'm gonna pass the mic. Let's go on to the next question. I'll come back around to that when we get to that question. Okay, I'll calm down a little bit.
That's all right, Dr. Wilson, and we are most happy that you successfully navigated the promotion and tenure process there. And, you know, we were several of us on this panel were your #1 fans in doing so. But let's go back for a second and talk about some of the barriers or challenges for the audience. I don't think we peeled the layers of the onion back quite enough in that regard. So what are some of the other barriers or challenges that any of you have faced while navigating the process in the academy? And then again, how receptive have your peers been to either your practice, Daryl, in your case, in terms of clinical practice and some of the other aspects of your scholarly activity, or with respect to us, research and teaching? Okay.
I can start. I mean, I used to teach at this, well, it doesn't really matter where I used to teach, but one of the things that I faced or have historically faced is I've been told pretty directly through mentors as well as others that my decision to focus on Black men's health in a school of public health was considered career suicide. I was told that very explicitly by somebody, and that was actually told to a mentor of mine by somebody who was actually a dean of a top school of public health. And the reason was because they're like, well, we don't do population specific things. I don't understand why you wouldn't just focus on cancer or disease or something like that that's more generalizable. And thankfully, I had a mentor and a colleague who could correct that person, or at least give them something to think about and say, well, how are you not going to focus on the population that seems to be, you know, dying prematurely at the highest rate, has the shortest life expectancy? How are you not going to deal with those issues? But the idea that I wanted to focus just on Black men was a risk. And the idea that I can't tell you about I don't even want to waste the time fighting, with explaining even the fight of trying to teach a class on men's health, when the idea of men is not, even though men are gendered, we don't, the synonym for gender usually in the scholarly world is women's health. And so when I decided I wanted to teach a class on men's health, because of the epidemiology shows that men are dying, again, prematurely and, have shorter life expectancy than women, I was originally told, no, I can't do that. And then I had to go back through the course catalog and show them all the courses that said gender and they really meant women, or they said women's health explicitly, and then they kind of had to relent and basically do that. So the point is there are a lot of those kind of underlying challenges that sort of attack the scholarship, and they don't have really a framework from which to understand why what we do is important. The last thing I'll say really quickly is it's interesting when I do talks and public talks around what I've learned around Black men's health, if I don't frame the Black men, if I say it's just broadly about men's health, there's a lot more resonance with what we found because other people haven't studied it in white men and other populations. Mm-hmm. People will gravitate, oh yeah, that fits me. But I'm just like, it's the exact same thing that we found in Black men that is generalizable to other groups. But because if I put the Black men lens on it and explicitly say that, then it usually gets dismissed as, oh, that's just something that happened with them. And they don't see the potential for what we do in scholarship on Black men to actually translate to other groups.
Thank you very much, Dr. Griffin, and having being very, very engaged in the Southern Community Cohort study right now. I'm beginning to see what you are speaking of a bit there. Thank you. Next, just jump in.
I'll just say, you know, to speak to that, I think one barrier is that, and this was highlighted earlier, is that these issues that we're discussing aren't necessarily personal to everybody. And that's a barrier, right? Because we bring that personal aspect to it, and because it's personal to us, and it's not necessarily because it's impacting our direct family member, right? But it's impacting our communities. And because it's personal, we bring a sense of urgency to this work. And one of the challenges is creating a sense of urgency beyond our sphere, our immediate sphere. And so that takes a lot of groundwork. And Dr. Griffith just talked about some of the work he had to do to make a curriculum change, right? So imagine doing it broadly, you know, for different initiatives, programs, curricula, collaborations, partnerships. You know, it requires a lot of legwork. And, you know, you have to demonstrate your knowledge of this, right? And then also try to help catch everybody else's learning curve up to that. And, you know, demonstrate, you know, why you need the resources to accomplish the goals of that, you know, of the work and the mission of the work. And so, you know, when there are many who don't quite understand yet the impact that this has and the population that it serves and why it's important, that's a barrier.
It sure is, most definitely.
Dr. Hodge, you want to go?
Yes, thank you. I would say, again, in agreement with what has already been stated, additional barriers are power structures. Again, being that one or two within a department, within a particular unit, there are power structures. You know, faculty, at least in education, you know, that's where I'm most familiar, have either fragile egos or egotistic. And there's not much in between. And so navigating those dynamics is a part of it. And when you have people who have fragile egos or egotistic and give them power, that's not a purity situation. And that happens. We know that happens. We also know that we have additional, and we tend to take this on as additional mentoring responsibilities that we accept because we're trying to pay it forward. Oftentimes more so than our colleagues do. It's been touched upon with regard to scholarship biases and so-called Black scholarship and being steered away from that. I guess what I would say to all of that is this. At least for me, I made some conscious decisions early on in my career, and that is that I would do what it is I decide is right to do, irresponsive or irregardless of the kinds of advice I would receive, and make decisions about what is good advice and bad advice. And I've received both, and just go forward. Now, there are penalties, or there are times when people will penalize you for doing or going against their advice. That's a part of the calculation that you make. But I've pretty much done what it is I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, in the kinds of ways I wanted to do it. And it didn't always please people. And I think if we wait until we all get this approval, the so-called approval from our senior colleagues, you know, we wouldn't have a President Obama. We wouldn't have a Black woman as vice president-elect right now. So I don't buy into the notion of waiting until people feel good about what it is we do. I think we need to press forward.
Excellent, excellent. Now, while
Hey,
we,
Dr. Hook, let me jump in on this.
yeah, let me just say one thing to go.
Go ahead.
Daryl and Daryl, would you go to the question and answer two questions? Ezekiel has a question for you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Mhm. Go right ahead, Sakobi.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, the main challenge that we have is racism. So I just want to say the obvious, right?
Mhm.
We didn't say it before. The main challenge we have is racism. And so I said the culture academia we have to change. What the fact embeddedness of racism in the culture academia? right? I mean, and Dr. Hood, you mentioned earlier, like, going against the grain. I grew up in the community with a major highway, with sewage treatment plant, with a landfill. My dad's a pipe fitter. I couldn't help but do the EJ work, right?
That's
And
right.
so, and let me just say this: there's no really objective science, folks. We all bring our lived experiences, our lenses, and our biases to the work that we do. So it's about rigor. Even rigor gets you in trouble. Like, oh, that's not rigorous enough. For you, if you do this kind of lollygag work, it's fine. But because I'm Black, it has to be more rigorous. So even rigor can be used against you. Let's be careful about this. It's all about power, as Dr. Hodge mentioned, power and control. Whose knowledge counts? Who's asking the questions? Why do you get to ask the questions? Why does your knowledge counts more, as Dr. Gray said, than community folks? Community folks are true subject matter experts. We have to uplift their community cultural knowledge systems. That's why I do the work that I do. So the challenge is making sure I bring them with me and have to push back against this garbage, right? And I'm going to say this about my team promotion process. I'm building up to the moment. Folks in my own unit didn't support the fact that I wanted to teach EJ. You hired me to do EJ, but I couldn't teach it. Taught it once in 2012, then the second time in 2016. You didn't hire me to be a fireman. You hired me to be a police officer. Been undermined and the microaggressions. Why get to teach your own core course, Dr. Wilson, and with your own stuff? Everybody teaches their own stuff, their own core course. That's the type of nonsense I got from colleagues, man, early on. It's just ridiculous. And this is at Maryland, where I thought was in, again, heaven, leaving South Carolina. To me, South Carolina, the race was up front. Maryland, smiling your face and getting stabbed in the gut at the same time. That's been
right.
Maryland. Let me be quiet right
Walk
there.
away. That's it, Dr. Wilson. I recall when you were going through a lot of this, and so coming, let's sort of bring this around full circle, because we want to allow the audience time to query us if as we conclude this hour. And so, what steps can we begin to take to address racism? Well, Sacobie and Dr. Griffin, I think that we at the Ohio State University here have began to do that. And Sam, would you just briefly highlight some of these initiatives that you and I are co-chairs of the Research and Creative Expression Committee with respect to developing mentoring programs? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And let me say this up front. When I started out 25 years ago, these were the same problems that we're hearing today. And 25 years before that, the same problems. And so still a lot of work to do. The second piece I would say is we need to do a better job of coming together in multi-million-dollar grants and lending our expertise and putting together collaborative efforts to make this kind of change. So that's that. Now, more to the question that was asked. The obvious kinds of things would include institutionalizing and publicizing sustainable commitment to diversity, such as the committee Dr. Hood, you and I co-chair, the research-driven mentoring program that is being established at Ohio State University, institutionalized initiatives with resources, because if you don't have resources, you actually go nowhere. For an example, the Seed Fund for the Racial Justice $1 million grant that Ohio State competition is active right now. Of course, you're going to develop strategies and plans for diversity, recruit, mentor more persons of color. Don't make excuses about when you do searches that you cannot find a diverse pool. Of course you can. We know that in athletics, they find talented Black folk all the time. You can do the same in medicine, in education, whatever field it is, because there are talented, well-educated, well-prepared Black men and women across the country in our various fields. So please don't accept that excuse. And then the cultural change is a really difficult piece, but a necessary piece as well. And always have resources to support whatever it is you do.
Very good. Derek, Vanderbilt. What are some of those?
Talk about Vanderbilt. I'll just there's another, I don't even want to get into Vanderbilt. I mean, it's so let me just say some broader things. So one of the pieces of advice I got really early on from a senior colleague, Dr. Lubice, or he was just presenting and talking about sort of how you think about things like tenure promotion. is one of the things you have to gear your packet to is not getting tenure at your institution, but at an institution that is a peer or better than yours. Because a key part of tenure promotion is the external letters. And even if you think about why somebody's going to try to retain you as a faculty member, it's not because it's kind of like dating. You're sometimes more attractive if somebody's attracted to you than necessarily just because you're valuable to that person or that institution in and of itself. So you want to think about what are the metrics of success that are going to be valuable at peer institutions or better institutions. And if you're able to meet those, then usually you're going to be fine getting tenure at your place, and those kind of things are going to matter. The second thing I would say is collaborate and be mentored and have networks with folks outside of your institution, because they can help you see whether things that are, once you get into the weeds of a certain kind of environment and space, it can feel normal even though it's very unhealthy. And so they can help you see that this ain't normal, this is not healthy. What Dr. Wilson was talking about and describing got to, I'm sure, feel normal in the sense that it was his daily lived experience, but it's not a normal process. And we kind of can normalize very unhealthy things and experiences of racism and how they're structured within an organizational context. So having mentors, having collaborators that can help you sort of strategize about that, and whether it's worth staying at the place where you are, or sometimes it's worth looking to see if the grass is greener in other places.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I'll say to what Dr. Hodge said, when we have these narratives about searches, the thing that we don't sort of acknowledge and recognize is when people get diverse searches, it's not because they sit back and wait on applications, they recruit. The reason that when they have diversity, you go find the people that you want to actually be on their faculty and do that. The reason that you all have such a tremendous, athletics program and whatever is not because y'all sit back and, let people come to you, you go get them. Now, unfortunately, y'all have been, or fortunately, depending on how you think about it, you've been successful enough that people will just come to you too. But that's usually after you've shown success and shown commitment to that population.
Very good. Very well. Very nice recitation, Dr. Griffin. And so, Daniel, might we want to solicit questions from the audience? We only have, a couple of minutes left here.
No, definitely. I think that's a great idea. I think we could go to the question posed in our Q&A from Jonathan Baker, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Dr. Baker asked, can you describe the camaraderie experienced by working with African-American faculty and staff and other departments? He expressed, I personally have used those experiences to motivate me to continue being the only African-American male or female in my own department.
I think we all can chime in on that. Sam, you want to start us off there? You're nodding your head. So,
well, yes, most of my collaborations are outside of my department, outside of my program. Most are national, international connections, not simply because of those concerns we've talked about, but oftentimes you're finding people who are noted in the profession at other places. And so naturally you make those connections to do those collaborations. So I think that's a part of it. And then mentoring, you get mentoring from a lot of different places. There is no such thing as just having one mentor who's going to have all the answers. Right. You have different kinds of mentors as well. Those who you just need to have a conversation with, to unload from time to time, those who can give you certain advice and direction. So you're gonna have different mentors in different places to help you along the way.
And I think too, as it pertains to African-American faculty, I do agree with Dr. Baker that, I too seek motivation and insights and value from my colleagues who are outside of my department who are African-American. And what I've found, just in personal experience, and I'm not speaking all the time, but in most cases, because we are some of the few, we tend to, if we don't know each other personally, we've seen each other in some venue, fashion, or form. And by virtue of that, are more accessible to one another. That is, if I reach out to a colleague from a different department, I am likely to get a quick response because folks know that we are aligned in vision and scope, and that we are one of the few. And so I found my colleagues in other departments who are African-American to be very responsive and thoughtful. And if they aren't the person I need to connect with, they are very much willing to connect me with that person. or people.
And that certainly is true. I echo that sentiment. Sakobi, did you want to comment there?
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Griffith.
Mhm. Okay, well, we can just continue on with the question. Certainly, Daniel, is there one more?
Yeah, so there is a follow-up question,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. In this national reckoning of race, have you noticed an increase in interest or support, or at least empathy from your white colleagues?
Well, here in the public health, in the College of Public Health, certainly we have a very, very proactive dean. I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence Committee here in the College of Public Health. And we put together a robust, a very, very, very introspective program where our white colleagues have to begin that process of introspection. It's called the Communities of Inclusion Program. Their readings, writings, films. We read 13 and had a discussion with the pretty much all white faculty, right? Here in the College of Public Health. And I was one of the people that led that discussion. Now, excuse me, am I supposed to walk Caucasians through the process of atoning and reckoning? That can't happen. Now, I can show you how to do it, but and so I'll leave it right there. Let everybody chime in on that.
I'll chime in real quick. I think I've gotten more attention, more people, but also I've gotten more work. It's like some last year didn't know me. Now it's hot, you all know me. I've been in this work for years, and all of a sudden you want to come to me for all these DEI discussions, National Academy of Science, Citizen Science Association, Williams School of Public Health, everybody in that grandmama. Where were you at? I was talking like Don Quixote and Groundhog's Day, but now all of a sudden that stuff is valued. That's problematic. They need to do work for themselves, by themselves. We've done a lot of work, civil rights movement. It's on them, the 55% who voted for Trump. You know what I'm talking about. It's them to do that work, and we can give them some stuff, but I'm gonna stop there.
Hey, can I just ask a question, Sakobi? Did you quote the philosopher Mike Jones on that one?
Mike Jones.
Daryl, we're still live.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
Let me just, I can't do that with that. But let me just say this. I think you have to make a strategic decision when you do this work, how much you're going to invest in other people's development and growth, how much you're going to focus on your own scholarship. You will be called because you're a Black male faculty member or because you're a Black faculty member to serve other people in their development, in progress in moving the institution along and in moving your colleagues along. I honestly think you have to decide how much of that you can do. And frankly, in a lot of cases, I would suggest you not do it. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but you're not going to get but so much credit for that. If you're not still publishing, if you're not still getting grants, if you're not still doing, it is draining. The other important point is, that's not going to count. Like, they're not going to say, he's been doing all this service. We're going to count his publications. We're going to take, off of his number of publications because he's been doing all this university service. They're not going to care. That is not going to matter. It's not going to help. So you've got to really realize that, that can be nice and it can make your colleagues feel good and so forth, but you have to still do your work, and that's got to be the priority.
Exactly. And that's what I meant, Dr. Griffith, by that thankless task. And I would not, sort of hope that anyone coming up on the tenure track would be, but that is exactly what happens. Daniel, are we out of time?
Yes, we are. So in the respective time, we would definitely want to close out this webinar. I want to thank our moderator, Dr. Hood, and our profound panelists, Dr. Hodge, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Griffith, and Dr. Gray. I really thank you for taking the time this morning to come speak with me and our audience. I hope everyone agrees that the information gained today was both authentic and rich. Similar to our previous webinars, I hope to see this conversation progress from talk into action. There's been a lot of talk over the years. We definitely need to see these words of wisdom be put into action. If you enjoyed today's session, please register for our last webinar of the series highlighting the Black male staff Ohio State experience, which is scheduled for December 2nd, 2020. Until then, have a great day and stay safe. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you all. I
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Good meeting you,
Y'all
brother.
take care. Have a good week.
Appreciate it. You too.
Enjoy that. Watch out for the turduckens.